Welcome to Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Co-op Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes. Welcome to Everything Cooperative. This morning, we are excited that we have an accountant with us this morning to talk about what audits are all about and what accountant can do. You know, we have a chart. It's sort of the organization chart of a cooperative or of a business. And in the cooperative, at the top of the chart, the people with the most power are the members, because the members vote for the board of directors. And they have a say in what the board does. They have a say in creating the policies. And then the board will hire managers. And then those managers will hire staff, and they will work with vendors and hire vendors. But the board also hires the attorney for the cooperative, and they hire an accountant to do the audit. So the auditor reports into the board, and the board signs the engagement letter with the auditor. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Vernon.
And did I say that all right? Did I get that straight?
Yes, and you know, I am so happy. It's hardly ever the case that anyone uses the words accountant and excited in the same sentence. So I was so happy to hear that.
Well, that's becoming an appreciation over time, because I did not used to think that accountants provided a lot of value and they just came in and told you what you did wrong. But I've since learned, in working with a number of accountants, in particular with your firm also, that you all can really, really help the board and management improve on what we do.
Yeah, that's one of the big reasons that I'm in the whole accounting profession, is to try to help people. And before I really got into accounting and had it be my profession and my career, I myself didn't really get what accountants do for much of the time. And I too would have thought that they mostly did activities that were pretty boring and mundane and not particularly helpful or empowering, but it actually is a good part of my career, and I think that most accountants who are really, into the profession would agree that helping people and helping organizations and helping co-ops for people like me who do co-op accounting, that's all a huge positive part of why I'm in the game and why I'm passionate about what I do.
So let's talk about that. How did you get into this game? And let's go all the way back to college. What did you major in college?
Yeah, you really have to go all the way back there to get the story of how I became involved in co-op accounting. When I was in college, I was my major at the University of Wisconsin was biochemistry.
Okay, I can see the connection between biochemistry and accounting, but no, I can't see that connection. Okay, keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, they both involve a lot of mathematical calculations.
Okay.
Maybe that's the one and only connection. But I was studying biochemistry, and at the time, when I started my junior year in college, I moved into a housing co-op in Madison. It was a wonderful co-op called Lothlorien in Madison, and I was loving my co-op life and doing my studies in biochemistry And then I got elected to the board of directors of the cooperative organization of which Lothlorien Co-op was a member. It's called Madison Community Co-op.
Okay, hold on a second.
So I was serving on the board of Madison Community Co-op.
Brian, hold a second. Brian?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of people out there, I've had people from NASCO, the North American Student Association of Co-ops and so forth, but a lot of people may not know what a student housing co-op is. So can I get you to interject what that is? Thank
you, Vernon. Housing co-op is when the individuals living in a particular housing unit or house or housing complex, they collectively own the organization that owns the real estate.
So the students own this real estate?
Yes, they do.
Oh.
They would own they are the owners of the organization that owns the properties. And so they are their own landlords, is the basic way a housing co-op works. And if you're a young person, a college age, that's really one of the only ways that most people of that age group are able to have any form of home ownership, is to join a housing co-op and collectively own your home together.
So you're
that's
undergrad.
The situation I was in.
You're undergrad, a junior. So as a junior, you're 19, 20 years old.
That's right. That's what I was.
And you have the responsibility of, with your other students, you have the responsibility of running this house or this multifamily project building. Okay. Yep. Good. All right. So now you get elected to the board. So you got the members. When I talked that organization chart, the other members, the other students have elected you to the board. Go.
That is right.
Okay.
So I am on the board of directors of this organization that owns the My House, Lothlorien, and a few other housing co-ops in Madison. And I really enjoyed that board service. As a matter of fact, the more I got into it, the more I realized that I enjoyed this housing co-op governance more than I enjoyed my studies of biochemistry, which was the official reason I was in college in the first place.
So where you laid your head and slept, you enjoyed it more, the managing of that, than your studies. Okay, I got it.
It was, and it wasn't even close.
Okay.
It wasn't even close.
Okay.
It was very clear that that my passion lied in helping serve my co-op rather than my official academic pursuits.
All right.
And so the closer I got to graduating, the more I realized that biochemistry just wasn't my cup of tea. It just wasn't really what I wanted to do as a career. And so after I graduated with that degree, I did get that undergraduate degree.
Yeah, smart.
Okay. I have that nice piece of paper that said I, at one point in my life, had sufficient biochemistry credentials to have an undergraduate degree in that. Mm-hmm. And then I started to go to business school at the University of Wisconsin to obtain, business skills. And it wasn't necessarily to serve co-ops specifically in the long term. It was generally so that I could serve co-ops or nonprofits and maybe other small businesses that had a good socially conscious message and mission. And so I got my business school degree, and then lo and behold, the same housing co-op that I had been living at as an undergraduate, they had a staff opening. Their financial manager was leaving the organization, and the housing co-op needed a new financial manager. And I applied and got that job and became the financial coordinator for Madison Community Cooperative. And I did that job for 9 years and worked with the board of directors and the membership. And that was a great experience.
So let me clear up for me. Did you get a master's in business administration, or you went back on another undergraduate degree?
I got a master's in business. It's technically, what I got was technically not an MBA. It's just a master's in business. But yes, I do have a master's degree.
Was that a focus in accounting or just general business?
It was just general business.
Got it.
And that's a good point, because at the time, even though I got this business degree, I didn't really know that I wanted to drift into the accounting role in particular. At that time, I did not really think of myself as an accountant. I thought of myself as more of a business generalist.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked for the co-op as their financial coordinator, and one of the aspects that I really enjoyed doing, the most of all, was to help educate the members of the board in financial matters. And, because as we mentioned, this is a co-op, a housing co-op of predominantly young people college age, and people of that age generally don't have a whole lot of financial skills or financial sophistication. So I really took it upon myself to do a lot of financial education to the board and the individuals at each of the individual houses who were responsible for handling the money, really educating them in how basic accounting and basic finance works.
Okay. How many people you think that was in all of these different houses that you are helping to educate?
The total membership of all the houses is around 200.
Wow. Okay.
And so there's quite a bit of turnover every year. And so in a given year, going from one year to the next, you might have 100 of those 200 people stay, and then 100 of them move out, and 100 new people come in who are all eager but a little unsophisticated when it comes to proper financial management of their co-ops.
I want to add something to what you said, and then we're going to take our first break here.
Okay.
So you said people of that age, you're talking about maybe from 17 at the youngest to 21, 22 oldest, don't understand financial management, and you were using the fifth principle of co-ops, education, training, and information to train them.
Exactly.
Okay. And what I wanted to add to that is I have found in my 72 years on this planet that most people don't understand finances at any age. Okay. So it's not just that cohort of young people. But one of the things that I've also found with people on this radio program for 6 years is that when they get into co-ops, they have to learn it. And that helps them in every aspect of their life, their own budgets, their own ways of making decisions about whether to spend or not spend, and so forth. So
that's absolutely true. And
we're going to take our break. Please hold on to that comment, and we'll come right back to it right after the break. We'll get the news, the weather, and so forth, and we'll be right back to you. Information is power, and that's why WOL makes a great partner, because the National Co-op Bank sponsoring this program so that we can give you information about co-ops, information about what the benefits of co-ops are and where they are, so you can go find a co-op or start your own. Get it with a group of people and start your own co-op. And today we have Mr. Brian Dahlk, D-A-H-L-K, who's with Wegners CPAs, W-E-G-N-E-R-S CPAs. And we're talking about his story. We're going down a storyline that he was majoring in biochemistry, got a degree in that, but somehow through his living in a student housing co-ops with other young people, having that responsibility of running a business, running their housing, and they had about 200 people, 200 members in it, so it's not a small business. And he learned about finances and learned about managing in terms he got elected on the board. That meant he had to raise his hand and say, I want to be on the board. And then he had to get his fellow classmates and peers to vote for him. So he got elected. He found out about this finance thing and said, oh, I like this much more than biochemistry. So he moved over into getting an MBA, master's in business, and therefore learning about co-ops, and worked in that cooperative for 9 years as their financial person, teaching other people about it. And take off, Brian, where you were before we left the break.
Yeah, that's a very good summary, Vernon. And we were just mentioning that a lack of financial sophistication is quite common among young people without a whole lot of life experience, but it's also fairly common of people of all ages. You know, it's not simply the case that when somebody hits the age 30 or so, they instantly absorb all this financial knowledge and have all of a sudden newfound financial expertise. We all need, financial training and education to be able to do that well in either our businesses we're a part of and our lives in general. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely true.
All right. So you worked there for 9 years, and then where did you go from that housing co-op? Where did you go next?
That's a good question. I took a diversion and moved to the great state of California. And I lived in this beautiful West Coast town called Santa Cruz, California. Mm-hmm. And I worked for a nonprofit organization that was an advocacy group for people with disabilities. I was their accounting manager. And Vernon, it's an interesting story of how I chose Santa Cruz, California in the first place. When I was working for the Madison Community Co-op housing organization, I would occasionally take trips to other cities where there were other housing co-ops. And one of the places I visited was Santa Cruz, California, had a couple wonderful housing co-ops. And so I visited them, and actually one of them was one that I helped set up back in the late 1990s. And I just thought that whole scene out there was so great that I wanted to try living out there for a bit. So the housing co-ops actually were something that propagated that move. And I actually lived in a housing co-op in Santa Cruz, California for a while upon moving out there. Well, and then I decided to move back to Wisconsin.
Sorry, Brian, okay, but I'm just looking at the map. You went 2,150 miles west from Madison. You went from this time of year, 10-degree weather to 70-degree weather. And you went right to the ocean. Santa Cruz is right on wonderful. The ocean, right below San Jose.
Yes. Okay. When I moved out there, I just put everything that I could fit in my car, and it took me 4 days to drive out to California, and lived out there for 4.5 years.
So
it's a fantastic place to be, but as I think we all know, it's extremely expensive as well. And if it were a little bit more affordable, I might still be out there. But because it was of the high cost of living, I really didn't feel that I could, be out there as a real long-term prospect. So I came back to Madison.
Before you go, what was the name of that housing co-op? Because I may be going to San Francisco, and I might want to look them up.
Well, sadly, it no longer exists.
Oh, boy. Okay.
It was the house I lived in was called Chavez Co-op. And sadly, it's no longer there, but it was a wonderful place while it was in existence.
Okay.
So I came back to Wisconsin, and actually, there's one other interesting point about my time in California. I had, in the course of getting my business degree, in the 1990s, I realized that, or I did in California, I did some research and I found that I actually didn't have to get too many more accounting classes taken before I could become eligible to be a CPA. I didn't realize until long after I got my business degree that you don't have to have an accounting degree to be a CPA. And I think that's something a lot of people don't realize. You can have any degree as long as you've taken enough accounting courses and have enough accounting credits.
And then pass the test.
Yeah, and then if you have enough accounting credits, you are eligible to take the test. And so I realized I added up all the accounting credits I had, and I realized, hey, I only need a few more classes, and I am eligible to take the CPA exam. And so I did that in California. And it's funny, about a month before I moved back to Wisconsin, I got the notice that I had passed the CPA exam in California. And so I applied to be a CPA in the state of Wisconsin because I knew I was moving back to Wisconsin. And a couple months later, I got an offer from Wegner CPAs to interview for a job. Okay. And I joined Wegner CPAs. It was the year was 2006.
So, okay, but I'm going to go back, Brian, and make sure I understand and our listeners understand. In order to become a CPA, you have to take so many accounting classes. You don't necessarily have to have a degree in accounting, but you have to take so many accounting classes and then sit for the CPA exam and pass it, and then you are considered a CPA. Okay.
Yes. And each state also has varying criteria for how much accounting work you need to have done too. Either, like some states might say you have to be working at an accounting firm for a year or 2 years, and other states say no, you don't have to work at an accounting firm, but you have to have had a job that involves accounting for 1 or 2 years. So you have to have that kind of a real-world professional experience.
So you
is the third leg of the stool.
Your 9 years in the student co-op, you've done financial, which is a lot of accounting.
Yeah.
And then in the 4.5 years in Santa Cruz, were you at the nonprofit? Were you dealing with finances and accounting there?
Yes.
Too?
Yes.
Okay.
So I listed all those things in my application to become a CPA, and the folks who make that decision were apparently satisfied that I had sufficient professional experience. And so that was the third leg of the stool, that plus the CPA exam, plus enough accounting classes. And
so you became a CPA, a certified public accountant. And what year was that?
2006. And
you got this job at Wegners. Why did you choose Wegners, and why did they choose you?
Wegners has at the time, it had a very strong reputation for being good nonprofit auditors and working with the local nonprofit community, so that was important to me. I have a very strong tie to the nonprofit movement and several local nonprofit organizations, and so I was familiar with them because of the work that they had done in Madison with nonprofits that I was associated with. And at the time, the co-op matter was not all that prominent. Wegner CPAs was only working with a few co-ops back in 2006. But one thing, when I was considering joining Wegner, was I knew that they were wanting to do more co-ops, work with more co-ops, and that really intrigued me. because I certainly felt that I could play a role in helping Wegners grow its co-op accounting practice.
Okay, I want to stop you there because we're going to take our second break. And so I've gotten you packed your car. You drove from Madison to Santa Cruz. It took you 4 days. Stayed there for 4.5 years. It cost you way too much. Got your accounting, your CPA, and you drove back to Madison.
Okay. Yep, that's a good summary of that phase of my life.
We'll be right back. Please don't touch that dial, everybody.
Your news talk station.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oaks, and the program is Everything Cooperative. And you know, this program has been brought to you. The National Co-op Bank has sponsored us for the 6 years that we have been doing this program. The National Co-op Bank was founded in the 1980s, and their mission is to support and be an advocate for America's cooperatives and their members, especially in low-income communities, by providing innovative financial and related services. So especially in low-income communities, and this is where you will find a lot of African Americans and Hispanic folk, and so the National Co-op Bank has been working in these communities to provide these different services about co-ops. And we have Brian Dahlk on the line with us. Brian got bit by the cooperative spear at about the age of 19 when he was living in a student housing cooperative and got on the board and got a chance to have a voice in how that business was run. What kind of policies will your house have? Most students don't get that. You get into a dorm and you told, here are the rules. You get a book. And in this case, the students decided what those rules would be, and they implemented and held each other accountable for it. And he got bit by this cooperative spirit and about being into business. So then he went to Santa Cruz, came back to Madison, Wisconsin, about 2006, and joined the firm that he's with now from 2006, and that's about 14 years. So that's he's got about a 28-year experience working, 9 years, 4.5, and then now 14 years. So, Brian, what have you been doing? Okay, wait, before I do that, you have said that you have a sort of a social conscience. You want to work with businesses that have a mission of social, even like the National Co-op Bank, working with folks in low-income communities. And so your heart was toward nonprofit community, and that's why one of the reasons you went there. But when I looked up Wegner's core values, they seem to have a social, not a social bent. It seems to be very social. And to speak to it, it says doing the right thing is what core auditors are talking about, doing the right thing and putting people first.
Yes, we are. We don't, and I think this really goes back to a topic we were discussing earlier. We are a group of accountants that doesn't just try to make sure that people are following the rules and pointing out when people do things wrong. We want to work with people to make their organizations as good as they can be, helping them achieve their mission, working with them to provide financial education and help them educate them on some of the what we call best practices for doing accounting and setting up their financial processes. We really want to have ourselves seen as an ally of the organizations we work with. Not just somebody. It's not just a firm that people hire just because they have to hire an accounting firm to get, to be compliant in some particular area. And I think that most of the people here who actually do the accounting work along with me really buy into that mission too. And as a result, Wegner has had a very low turnover in our accounting staff compared to most other firms. If you look at most other firms, the turnover among accounting staff is around the range of 30% a year or so. And that varies quite a bit depending on the size of the firm, but 30% is fairly common. And we usually average less than 5% turnover per year.
Wow.
And I think that's because people here really enjoy being, working with good organizations that are doing good work and trying to help them with that work and fulfilling their benevolent missions.
So I get doing the right thing is we believe in the golden rule. I'm reading from your webpage, and
Yes.
in doing what is right for our clients and employees, and putting people first. We believe in treating others as we'd like to be treated. That's the golden rule. We strive to provide continuous education and encourage intellectual growth, and providing relationship-driven services. So I just think that's awesome, particularly, and I don't know if you know this, but the common thread between what looks like all religions, all spirituality is this golden rule.
Yeah.
And Christianity says, as ye would that men should do to you, you also do that to them likewise.
Yes, I totally agree that's a common thread of all religions, and and not just religions, but I think that is one of the fundamental basis of being a really good, decent human being is the golden rule. And if we all were to keep that more in the forefront of our mind as we go about our lives, I think that that helps make the world a good place.
So whether it's Islam or Judaism or Buddhism or Unitarian or Native Americans, that's my Baha'i, Mormons, it doesn't make any difference. And I like what you said, though, is that it seems to be the basis of human beingness.
Yeah. What makes us human.
Yeah. Yes.
And human in the best sense of the word, in the most optimistic, positive sense of the word of what it means to be human.
And so this is not what I would expect from an accounting firm. Okay.
Yeah, well, me neither. Back in my younger days, I didn't really have any inkling that you could tie an accounting firm or the accounting profession to some of these concepts. But I'm sure glad that you really can make that connection, because it certainly has made my job a lot more positive and enjoyable.
Okay, now you're getting to the question I'll ask you later, but is what do you like what you're doing? But before that one, if you look at the co-op values, and it sort of all fit, co-ops are based on the values of self-help, self-responsibility, democracy, equality, equity, and solidarity. But I like the ethical values of honesty, openness, social responsibility, and caring for others. So in there, this caring for others, being honest, being open, sharing, communicating, it's all around the golden rule. So that's
absolutely
right in there.
Absolutely. And that's when it gets down to it, I don't know if I've ever really thought about it exactly in those terms, but those basic concepts are what has always drawn me to the co-op movement since I was, that 19, 20-year-old back in college, and I got my first taste of co-ops and have been bitten by the co-op bug ever since. It really goes back to those things that are inherent in what a co-op is and what it's supposed to be all about. Those principles, and I think that many people who don't really know about what a co-op is, and then end up getting involved somehow, either through a housing co-op or some other kind of co-op business. I would guess a large percentage of individuals come to the same realization that this co-op thing isn't just a different business model, but it encompasses a lot of really fantastic values that are really positive things about what it means to be human.
Yep. What does it mean to be him? Wanting the same thing for your neighbor that you want for yourself.
Yes.
Yes.
And in the meantime, if we do have that collectively, and it turns out to make good business sense, that's just an extra benefit. We get the good business, and we get the good human values that are encompassed in that all at the same time.
Yes.
Talk about a win-win.
Win-win-win, because that also helps the community you're in, that helps the world when you're doing those kinds of things. And what I want to point out real quickly, though, is in your 1990, the early 91, 92, you learned about co-ops. You were 19. I learned about them almost the same time in about 1994, but I was 46 and you were 19. So there's some little difference there. Okay. I wish I could have learned about co-ops at 19. It would have been.
Hey, it's never too late, though.
Yeah, never too late. And then I got bit by the bug as I watch everyday people without a degree make very intelligent decisions and could understand these financial principles that we talk about. Okay, so this is wonderful. This is Wegners, and we got this core value and what you're doing. So in the audit, what is an audit as a CPA? What is that? It's good that we were talking about this, because a lot of people really don't grasp what an audit is. The financial records of an organization, and that includes a co-op, are maintained by the management of the co-op. And what an audit is it involves an independent financial professional coming in and examining the financial records and giving some assurance to the board of directors, and in a co-op to the board of directors and the members, that the financial information is materially correct. And if there are any major suspected instances of malfeasance, such as fraud or embezzlement, the auditor has a responsibility to inform the board of directors of their findings. So if you're a member, or especially a part of the board of directors of a co-op, an audit really has the benefit of giving you some assurance that management is maintaining the books properly. And so you can sleep better at night knowing that your business is being, at least the financial aspect, is being taken care of appropriately. Okay, so we're getting ready to take our next break, but you use some words like malfeasance, and I just have it that nobody's taking any money. That's how I have it. That nobody's saying, okay, the money should be in the treasury of the co-op or of the business of the housing co-op or whatever other co-op it is, but I'm going to take some of that money and put it over here in my checking account, or to buy my car or take a vacation or whatever one would want to take. And sometimes I found that people will make bad choices because they're in a bad situation. A family member is really bad or sick, and they have to have money to take care of the medical bills, and so that they will do things that are bad. So the whole financial system is to keep honest people honest, is how I view it. Okay, it's not
that is correct.
Not necessarily that you say, I think you are a bad person and you will steal from me. Is that when and if you have a bad situation and you have to make a choice, don't come here trying to get it out of the till of this business that either I'm managing or have some oversight on. And there might be some better ways of doing it. And if it's a good co-op, folks can come to the co-op board and say, I have this problem. Can you help? Because it's people helping each other.
That's the correct channel to take those issues to.
We're going to take our break, and then we'll be right back. And we only have another 12 or 15 minutes. This has been great, Brian. It's great. We'll be right back. Everybody, this is Vernon Oaks, and we have Brian Dahlk on the phone with us this morning. He is an accountant, an auditor, and he explained to us what an audit is, and that's mainly making sure that nobody takes any money. But you also said, Brian, that you want to be in a partnership. I don't know if you use that word, but that's what I got with the people that you are auditing, the organizations that you serve, so you can also help them figure out if they're doing things right, if there's good governance and good management. So what is good governance? How do you look and see if the board is doing what they're supposed to be doing?
Well, at the very high level, you want to make sure that the board is doing things that are in the best interests of the organization, and they're not doing things that, number one, they're not doing things in their own personal best interests. That's definitely a violation of one of the duties. You have to be looking out for the organization, the co-op as a whole. That's
called duty of loyalty.
That's right.
No conflict of interest. You make the decision what's best for the group. That's what best for everybody, not for individual. Okay.
That's right. And pursuing that goal, a board member really needs to take the time to understand all the information and all the facts and circumstances that they're faced with when they are discussing and voting on various issues that come before them. A good board member is always prepared at a board meeting. They've done their work to understand the issues they're faced with, and if they don't understand things, they ask questions.
So that one talks about the duty of care, take care of the corporation by ensuring prudent use of all of the assets, facility, people, goodwill, money, all of that. They're making good decisions.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things, too, is a board member of a co-op has to take two big things into account. They have to take into account what they personally feel is in the best interests of the organization as a whole, and they have to take into account what their how their members feel about a certain thing, because you're representing the members that elected you on the board, but you also have to do what you feel is right for the organization's best interest in the long run. So you have to take both those things into account.
That gets to the loyalty again, I believe. That sort of fits under that one.
Yes.
And the only other one is that they have to follow the laws of the land and the bylaws.
Yep, the duty of obedience. You can't just do, even if you think something is good for the co-op, you can't just do it if it's in violation of something that you really shouldn't be violating.
So I would tell boards that I've managed housing co-ops, that for anybody out there that don't know it, I'd say boards, you follow your bylaws. If there's something that you want to do that's outside your bylaws, assuming what you want to do is within the laws, the federal laws and the state laws and county laws, and you want to change your bylaws. Don't just go do it. There are the procedures on how you change your bylaws. So what you're doing is in line with all of the laws.
Yes. Yep. And almost all bylaws will have in the bylaws itself some statement about how the bylaws can be changed.
Yep.
So follow those proper mechanisms.
So in your audit, how do you help to find out if co-op boards are doing the duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience? How do you figure out?
Well, I don't think there's any specific procedure we do. It's more of when we do an audit, we're not just looking at the actual numbers. We're taking a look at the whole organic organization. We're talking to people. We're talking to people who are part of management and part of the board, and asking them about, just getting a feel for what's going on and how they're making their decisions. And we do a lot of reading of the board minutes to understand what the board is deciding and voting on and how they're making those decisions. So we're getting involved in evaluating the governance of the organization. And many times we can kind of see, or many times we can get a pretty good feeling of whether a co-op board is doing a good job in following all of its duties, and when it maybe is a little shaky in those areas.
A little shaky, I got it.
Yeah. And so we as part of an audit, we don't just issue an audit report that says these are your financial statements. We do that, but we also usually issue an accompanying letter that gives our recommendations for how things can be improved. And if part of that improvement involves suggestions about the co-op governance, we will put that in the letter and say, these are some things that we strongly encourage you to consider implementing to make your co-op even better.
So when I've read those letters, it's twofold. It's to tell the management what some things, suggestions, and what they could do, maybe to tighten up their processes to make sure that nobody can take or do something wrong. Mm-hmm. And whatever procedures are happening, and also to say to the board, here's some things that you can do to improve the ways in which you are doing things.
Exactly. Yes, and there isn't any hardcore rule about a certain amount or portion of that letter should be addressed to the board, and a certain portion should be addressed to management functions. It's an art to evaluating the co-op as an organic is an organic entity and determining what the recommendations should be and which parties should have the focus of which recommendations.
Fantastic. Now, very quickly, there are 4 types of co-ops. If a co-op is owned and controlled by the employees, it's called a worker co-op. If it's owned and controlled by the people that use the products and services, it's called a consumer co-op. And in the consumer co-op, you have credit unions and housing co-ops, which we've talked about. You could have in Madison, where you're at, there's a clinic, health clinic that is owned by the patients, which is a consumer co-op, which I'm really wanting to go and see how that works. Then you have a purchasing co-op. Farmers use those as the main place, but I'm beginning to find that there's others. One here in D.C. called CPA, Community Purchasing Alliance, that was started for nonprofits.
Yeah, and we work with them.
Oh, okay. And so it is a fantastic, phenomenal organization.
Yes, they are.
We've had 2 or 3 of those people that work there, and Paul Hazen, who helped us start it, to be on this program to talk about it. And so that's one side. And farmers would get together and say, okay, we need seed and fertilizer and gas and equipment, and they would pool their resources. But it start a company that got experience in all of these things so they could get a better product for a lower price. They buy in bulk. And then on the other end of the farm, they get this stuff and they produce whatever they produce. And then they have a marketing co-op. That's the 4th type. And some people call them producer co-ops. And that all of your dairy farmers would send they would be members of his co-op. This is another business that have the expertise of how to market these things, whether it's cranberries in Ocean Spray, or if it's dairy in Cabot Creamery or Organic Valley, or was it, I'm trying to think of the sardine, company. But anyway, no matter what it is, or peanuts or whatever they're producing, then these organizations, marketing firms, will market those and get them to different markets that the particular farmer could not reach, and therefore they would make more money, and it would take away some of the risk of farming. So those are your four types. Mm-hmm. Which ones do you work with?
We work a lot with the consumer co-ops, and that is there are two big subsectors for us. There's the housing co-ops, mm-hmm. which we have been discussing. That's a huge part of my own background. And as a matter of fact, that housing co-op that I first started out in when I was in college, just last night I went to their board meeting and presented their audit, our audit of their financial statements to that very same group. So I still have that connection.
And you got to quicken it up because we only have about a minute and a half left. So you got housing co-ops and consumers. Yep,
housing co-ops. And the other big kind of consumer co-op we work with is the food co-ops, in which the people who shop there can join and become members. So you can become an owner of the grocery store that you shop at. Mm-hmm. And worker co-ops, we do a lot of work with them. That's, the people who run the business are also the people who own the business. And, for example, there's a nice taxi cab co-op here in Madison called Union Cab, where the cab drivers collectively own the cab company. And the other one is the purchasing co-ops, where businesses can come together and purchase things collectively and save a lot of money and costs that way.
Last 30 seconds, Brian, what's a message you'd like to leave people with?
I just love co-ops, both personally and professionally. They are an excellent way to do what I call economic democracy.
Okay.
And it's very empowering, and it really does involve those almost spiritual.
We got to go. I got it. I love it. Thank you very much, Brian. Sorry to cut you off when you're in there with the spiritual piece. We'll see you everybody next week. Please live cooperatively.